the Dream Journal from the studios of KSQD in a finally sunny Santa Cruz. The Dream Journal is a weekly show where we explore the healing powers of nighttime dreams through conversations with dream experts and with you.
Time is keenly found. We are not alone. Water over stone, even if you're by yourself.
In the words of Carl Jung, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. Today's music is called Meritage. Created new, as usual, this morning. I am your host, Catherine Bell of Experiential Dreamwork, and welcome to the Dream Journal. How can you dream well if you're not sleeping well? Why sleep is so important and how to get more of it. Our guest today is neurologist and sleep specialist, Dr. Chris Winter, host of Sleep Unplugged. The Dream Journal is also a weekly podcast, but please subscribe, rate, and review. Most importantly, tell your friends. The mission of this show is to get people talking about their dreams, and that's one way that you can initiate the conversation. Hey, I've been listening to this podcast called The Dream Journal. You can find archives on any of the major podcast platforms. They're also available at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and at ksqd.org/the-dream-journal. Okay, well, it's good to be back in the studio. Last week, I was stuck at home. Could not get to the studio for love nor money. Drove around 45 minutes in the pouring rain and found trees down everywhere. But I'm back in the studio this week in my nice, fresh microphone. Good sound today. So I have had a couple of dreams recently which have left me feeling a little anxious, and I'm wanting to stay with the sense of the dreams rather than going to the name anxiety, that word of anxious. So in one of the dreams, there is a 12-year-old girl who is moving out. She'd been living with her mother, and they've decided she should live alone now. And there is a way that, they've decided this is the best thing, but I don't think so. I think this girl is too young to move out. And I have this kind of contracted feeling, and but I'm not telling anybody about it. And instead I'm focused on trying to repot some plants as like housewarming gifts. But I realize that the kind of the locus of feeling of this dream is that girl who is moving out. And, there's something wonderful about being an adult, I guess. Like coming out from underneath the influence of my mother in a certain way. But there's I'm not sure I'm quite ready. And so just feeling that sense of anxiety and sort of contraction around not willing to talk to her about it either, which is interesting. Okay, welcome, Dr. Winter. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate the invitation.
Excellent. Dr. Chris Winter is a neurologist and sleep specialist. He is the author of The Sleep Solution, Why Your Sleep is Broken and How to Fix It, and also The Rested Child, Why Your Tired, Wired, or Irritable Child May Have a Sleep Disorder and How to Help. In addition to optimizing the sleep of numerous professional sports organizations, he hosts the podcast Sleep Unplugged with Dr. Chris Winter, which is consistently ranked as one of the most popular medical podcasts in the country. He is also the host of the Sleep.com series, Sleeping Around, with Dr. Chris Winter. And you can find our guest at wchriswinter.com. Also, you can, he's active on various social media, including TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. And you can find him there at drchriswinter. Okay, Chris, well, thanks so much for being on the show.
It's really fun to be here. It's a great topic, actually.
Excellent. Well, it's this is a show about dreaming, but you can't really begin with your dreams until you have got some good night's sleep. And so I thought it would be a really good fit. And I know I have my own sleeping difficulties, and so I'm going to ask you some questions about that in a little bit. But I want to have you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and how did you get started with interest in sleep?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It's interesting. Thinking back, I think I always liked sleep. I don't think that's particularly unique, but I just remember really liking it. I think like any child, when you're awake and having fun and playing and doing things, and your parents say you need to go to bed, it maybe is not a great feeling. But I always remember once I got there, I really liked being there. I liked reading in bed and just it was just a nice little tranquil space. So I always kind of ran towards that situation. But the idea that that would be some sort of career never crossed my mind, largely because I don't think that most people, at least most people of my generation, thought of sleep as being part of medicine or even science. It was just kind of this ethereal thing that you did, but it was, it's sort of like walking. You don't go into a career of walking, like it's just so you do a lot of it, but you don't really, there's no job there. I really like walking. I want to make a career out of walking, or something. So when I had this idea of being a doctor, but both my parents were school teachers first in their families to go to college. And so you sort of, as a young person, you pick this career. I'm going to be an astronaut. I'm going to be a, secret agent or something. And I think for a lot of young people, you don't really know what that means. In fact, I always joke that I probably stuck with the career just because of the feedback I got from, grandparents. If you tell them, I'm going to be a pastry chef, they're like, they don't care about that. But I want to be a doctor. Oh, Chris is going to be a doctor, and give him a piece of candy and $1 and, or something like, we're so excited. Like, so you get this kind of reverse feedback from your family and facilitation there. But so I got to college and really, I signed up for some pre-med classes, but I went to an advisor and he said, well, why don't you work for a doctor and see if you like it and, make some friends and get some experience. And so I started working for a doctor named Paul Surratt, who ran the sleep center at the University of Virginia. And really interesting guy and really cool father figure and mentor, and just really opened up a lot of doors for me, both professionally. He got me this membership to the Sleep Research Society, which I still have that card. I just thought was the best thing in the world. Went out on a date when you're in college and you pull out your sleep research card to show your date that you're somebody really important. And I just never left. Even at that point, I really liked the work. It was fun research, but I never really put it together that, well, this could be a career. But the field is so fun. You get to meet people like you and other clinicians and specialists and dream interpreters and all kinds of cool stuff. And the field is so welcoming and positive. I just never left. And so as I went through my undergraduate and medical school career, I became a neurologist because I really was interested in the brain. And it wasn't until the end of my medical school career that I kind of felt like, well, I don't want to leave this behind and treat headaches or Alzheimer's disease. I want to keep doing stuff within sleep. And so after I finished my neurology residency, I did a sleep fellowship and have been practicing adult and pediatric sleep medicine ever since and love it.
So you have a clinic, is it Charlottesville, Virginia? Am I remembering that right?
That's correct.
Yes.
I have a private clinic in Charlottesville, Virginia, which is near the University of Virginia, where I went to undergrad and did my neurology residency, but I'm not affiliated with them right now, but they're, great place. But yeah, so we're here in the city and we have our clinic and it's just a lot of fun. We treat a lot of people.
Oh, I love that. And so like, I know there's many books written on this, including I've heard you mention the Matthew Walker book, Why Sleep, Why We Sleep. But I wonder if you could give us like a encapsulated version of why is sleep important?
It's sort of like asking the question, why is breathing important? Or why is drinking water important? It's a massive answer. It's a very small answer. It's still somewhat of a nebulous answer in the sense that sleep is involved with everything that we do, from our metabolism to our cognitive health to our cardiovascular fitness. It really has its fingers in everything, just like hydration would. You can't say, well, when you hydrate, it's all because we want our skin to not be dry. I mean, that's one benefit of staying well hydrated, but it's one of many, and probably many that we don't really understand yet. So it's fun to be involved in something that is in some ways niche. I don't think a lot of people would say, seeing my sleep doctor is the most important doctor that I see. Although numbers would argue that. It's really funny. I remember when we had our first big recession, I remember thinking, well, this is really going to hurt our clinic, because patients will go see their cardiologist when they have chest pain. They'll go see their endocrinologist when their blood sugar is screwed up, but they're probably going to not spend the money or the time seeing their sleep doctor because, well, that's not nearly as important as these other things. And it was very much the opposite. It was, we found ourselves playing the role of primary care doctor, because as we were talking about somebody's restless leg, I'm like, you've got a really bad looking ulcer here on your foot that you should get taken care of. Oh, I know, I've been meaning to do that, but I just haven't pulled the trigger on going to see my primary care doctor. Well, wait a minute, you're here, so you can pull the trigger to see a doctor. So are you saying that you've chosen, I'm struggling with my sleep over this really nasty infected foot ulcer that you got here that I'm going to write you an antibiotic for, but you've got to see somebody. So it was really telling that not only is it fundamental to our health, but I think more and more people really prioritize it and value it and stress and are upset when it's not working well. And so being in that space of, yes, being somewhat niche, but that niche thing that we do is wildly important to your overall health and longevity and the way you feel, is a really, really fun space to be. And we really value and take that responsibility seriously.
Well, it is a third of our life, if you do the 8-hour paradigm.
That's right. Absolutely.
That's tremendous.
It's a lot of time. That's exactly right. Do you ever do that? One time I was thinking to myself, I'll floss for a minute every day. But then you compound that over a life. I just love those, like, get your phone out and get the calculator out. You're like, wow, I'm going to spend 6 months flossing over the period of my next.
Totally.
But the sleep one is an easy calculation. A third of your life right there. Boom, sleep in your bed.
It. So what about that canonical 8 hours? I mean, that's the number that's always tossed around. And is there a distribution of how much sleep people need? Some people swear, I'm fine on 5 hours a night, 4 hours a night. And some people clearly are not fine on that amount of sleep, even though they say they are. But is there truly a population of people who really are fine on less sleep than the canonical 8?
Yeah, by the way, great adjective there. Yes, and it is kind of canon. So the 8 hours is what I always tell patients or media or whoever we're talking to at the time. 8 hours is a great average for an adult sleeper. It might be a little on the higher side, but there's nothing wrong with that. So I like 8 hours. It's a round number. It's a pretty number. So I think it's a great place for people to start. It's sort of, I don't know, maybe the analogy would be, you don't feel great about your weight in some way. You go to a dietitian and they ask you some questions, weigh you maybe, and say, okay, well, for somebody your age and activity level and weight, you're probably going to be consuming around 2,300 calories a day. So maybe that's a great place to start. So let's do that. We'll structure your diet so you're taking in 2,300 calories a day and this percentage of protein and carbohydrate or whatever, and then you'll come back to see me in a few weeks and we'll see how things are going. If you're really hungry and you're just always uncomfortable, maybe you need more like 24, 25 because you're a busy person, you exercise a lot. Maybe 23 was a little too high. Maybe 21 is better for you. So I think in the same way, 8 is a great number to start, as long as people understand that it's the middle of a bell curve and you are an individual. You are Robert, keep thinking about Robert Van de Castle when you mentioned dreaming.
Yes.
Yeah, he was a really neat guy that I got to meet on several occasions. I actually have one of his books that he signed for me. But anyway, if you're somebody named Robert, you've got a unique sleep need that is changing probably throughout your life. So while it's okay to always start with averages, I think we need to finish with the individual. And that's one of the things I think some gets lost in the media article about, people who don't get 8 hours of sleep die of, heart attacks and strokes and things
yeah.
like that. Sure.
It's really dire. It sounds
Right,
like warnings are
exactly.
dire.
Yeah, we say that all the time. I tell Matt Walker all the time, your book has brought me so much business I could never pay you, because somebody reads that book and they're like, oh my God, I'm going to fall asleep right now.
It's pretty terrifying. It swept through my group of friends, and we all read it, and we were all like, oh my God, I'm not getting enough sleep.
Yeah, that's a fun book club, isn't it?
Yes.
That book club, like, let's drink more wine, ladies.
Oh.
We're doomed. So I think that as long as people understand this is an average, this is something you could shoot for, and understand that we can massage that number based upon the way things going forward is the right thing to do. Now, you also ask, can people do well on less? And yes, you can. And there's two sort of mechanisms for that. If you're somebody who requires 7 hours, that's genetically what you need, then yes, you're going to do just fine on 7 hours and be healthy. Mm-hmm. There are also people who possess certain genetics that allow them to, on the surface, function pretty well on inadequate sleep. And it's a real double-edged sword. I always call it the horsepower gene, although there's probably several genes that kind of control it. And that's the individual. I always call that person, my little name for that person is Jenny Trauma Surgeon. And if you talk to Jenny Trauma Surgeon, she'll say, hey, look, Chris, as long as I get 2 or 3 hours of sleep when I'm on call, I'm great for the day. I can do my operations and take people's spleens out, and scary. I'm fine. And you're like, well, yeah, that's terrifying. Number one, the biggest reason you're going to get hurt or die in a hospital is usually medical error, I think. That's always been the number one. So it is terrifying. It's also terrifying that an educated person who went through 4 years of medical school, of 7 years of residency, 3 years of fellowship, actually believes that she only needs 3 hours of sleep to be great. So what we always tell people is being able to do it and being at your best are really two different things. The unfortunate thing about that particular individual is that ability to function pretty well on 3 hours of sleep is a real advantage in a workplace. I mean, no wonder she's the chief of trauma surgery. Yeah, she's outworked all of her peers. But at some point, Jenny Trauma Surgeon needs to say, well, just because I can do it on 3 or 4 hours, is that the best thing for me in the long run? Right. I had a mentor who always said he had a saying for it, but I'm blanking on what it was. But it was basically 4 hours, you fly and then die at 54. 55 and die, 55 Ooh. Fly and die or something. I can't remember. But it was essentially, yeah, you'll do it. You'll look great. She'll do all these great surgeries. She'll get awards. She'll do her triathlons. Everybody will marvel at her energy. And then when she dies at age 54, everybody's like, wow, that's so crazy. She was so healthy. And she was so, and no, when you talk to them, like you talk to her spouse, he'll tell you she was very unhealthy, drank a lot of coffee, burned it at both ends, just could never settle down. And so I think some of us who have that horsepower gene, and if you look around medical schools and law schools all over the country, they're everywhere. You've got to ask that question. Yeah, you could stay up another hour and get this thing done, or you could go to bed, maybe do it tomorrow, and maybe live a little bit longer and enjoy your life a little bit more.
Right. So, one of the things that I'm always interested in, of course, is dreaming, all about the Dream Journal here. And my understanding is the way that sleep cycles work is that early on, when we first go to sleep, that we get a lot of non-REM sleep that does not involve dreaming. That there's little spurts of dreaming, but they get to be more frequent and longer throughout the night. So if I cut my night short, I'm really shorting myself of dreams. So, that tells me a bunch of things. One thing is that there are other things that sleep is doing that are more important than dreaming. Sorry, dreams. But it's apparently true.
We love you, dreams.
We love you. But it also, there's a lot of evidence that dreams are incredibly helpful in balancing out our emotions and even recognizing facial expressions. I think it's fascinating things that dreams do. And if we're shorting ourselves on that sleep, on the dream-rich sleep, then we're not going to get there to those benefits of the dreaming. So even those people, you're talking about Jenny Trauma Surgeon. So the question is it just when she's on call that she gets 3 or 4 hours of sleep, or is it every night? And I can imagine there's a humongous difference depending on whether it's every night versus just once or twice a week or a couple times a month, hopefully.
Yeah, well, you bring up a lot of great things. Your descriptions of dreaming are spot on, and that's important because I think more and more people are doing things to monitor their sleep. Wrist worn things and things, Aura rings and stuff like that. And we get a lot of patients who are like, "Gosh, I don't get any dreaming, and when I'm first asleep, or I'm only getting a few little cycles here at the end of the night." You're like, well, that's normal.
Yep.
So it's great to be able to talk about these types of things because the more people can be educated about what a normal night of sleep looks like, or a normal percentage of dreaming would be for an older individual, those things are really helpful to people. And you're exactly right. Those first few little blips of dreaming that we have, we usually start dreaming about 90 minutes after we fall asleep, are very fragile. And then as the night goes on, they become more robust. And most people will tell you that they're feeling like their biggest dream, the most vivid dream, the most story-like dream is the one right before they wake up in the morning. And that's very typical. So understanding that can really help you understand your dreaming and what that means more. You asked an interesting question about Jenny, trauma surgeon. She's only getting 3 hours when she's on call, and then she's getting 12 hours somewhere else. That can very well be the case. And a lot of people are like that. And we talk about, social jet lag or making up sleep on the weekend when you're not getting enough during the week. And, it's just sort of different degrees of ideal. And if somebody says, look, I'll do whatever you want, I would say get a perfect 8 hours from 11 to 7 every day and, go forward with your life. I don't know that that's necessarily congruent with reality. So people will miss flights, people will have deadlines that keep them up at night, or sick children or whatever. So I hope Jenny, trauma surgeon, is getting a lot more sleep on her days off and when she's on call. I remember from residency and medical school, like trauma surgeons would just hang around. You're like, they would leave, and then later on you're like, oh, hey, I thought you left. Yeah, well, I just decided to come back.
Oh.
They were they were always so nervous that they were going to miss the tractor trailer explosion that derails the train and takes down a helicopter. Like they wanted to be there for like that. They were not because they wanted suffering. They wanted to alleviate it.
Right.
And the idea that they would be their Tuesday off and it happens on the Tuesday, it was always strange. Like you almost had to, I always got the impression you had to run them out of the hospital. And you're like, don't you have a spouse and a couple kids? It just never seemed to compare to the farming equipment accident that they were scared they were going to miss and be able to save the day. But anyway, so you hope that these individuals do love their job, do a amazing service for people, but also take care of themselves and spend a little time with their family. But I don't think that's always the case. And, I think that people have more and more distractions and obstacles to get through, to get the sleep that they need. And I think people are just working more. It's an economically difficult time. So working 2 jobs or having side hustles, driving an Uber at night after you finish your first job is just more and more common. And these are very difficult conversations to have with patients. Like, I've got this ideal for you. You've got the reality of your living situation. We've got to come to some sort of agreement or plan that allows you to support your family and pay your rent, but also not put your car into a telephone pole.
Yeah, exactly. I was falling asleep at the wheel. That is
it's
a
tough.
reality.
It's tough.
Yep.
It is.
Yeah. So I'm wondering about. I have a list. I have so many things here. I have a huge list of things. I want to get into insomnia, but I might want to wait until after the break. Well, let's see. I've already said the word, so let's go for insomnia, because I'm thinking about your comparison to a nutritionist who says, 2,300 calories. So you can figure out how much food you're going to eat and, weigh it out or whatever it is and control that. But if you say, well, I want to get 8 hours of sleep and I'll lay down, I may or may not actually go to sleep. I don't know if it's an automatic process or something. There's something involuntary about it. You can't just say, I will sleep now.
That's right.
And so I am actually a fairly frequent insomnia sufferer, and it is difficult. In fact, last night I had a particularly difficult time sleeping, and I was listening to your podcast while I was sleeping, one about the 9 P's of insomnia. And
did it put you to sleep?
No, it didn't, unfortunately.
That's too bad.
I know. It's too bad. But It is. It brought up a lot of questions for me about all these influences in insomnia, and one of the big takeaways I got is that a lot of it has to do with your relationship to insomnia. Are you anxious about it? Is it, are you like I'm a insomnia a couple times a week. But it's not, I don't really get anxious about it. I'm more involved in what am I thinking about? Like that's what I'm thinking about rather than laying there thinking, oh my God, I got to get to sleep. And like having the idea of that I'm not getting enough sleep itself is damaging.
Yeah, and that's, you're bringing up a lot of things, and I appreciate you listening to my podcast. The first Monday of every month, so if you look at it, August 1st or September 1st or whatever, the first Monday that happens to be in the month, we always do some topic about insomnia. And you're referring to an interesting episode that probably isn't the greatest one for an insomnia patient to listen to as they're trying to fall asleep, because it is meant to be thought-provoking. And there's something called the 3 Ps of insomnia that wonderful sleep physician in the past kind of came up with to sort of structure the way we think about insomnia. And we just for fun made it 9 Ps and talked about a few extra things. But it was meant to be allow you to kind of think about those things in the sense that what you said is important, that your relationship to the sleep and the way you feel about it is often the driving force, meaning we're all going to go to bed at night. Some of us will fall asleep very quickly. Unfortunately, the media seems to portray that as being a healthy sleeper. I don't think that's a great way to think about healthy sleep. And we see that a lot. A patient comes to my office and says, look, my partner falls asleep so fast and I'm just so jealous and I just wish that I could be like him because his head is asleep before he hits the pillow and I'm there for 30 minutes struggling. Mm-hmm. And I often tell patients, I'm actually more worried about your husband than I am you. That why is he so driven to sleep? What is that mechanism that's happening? I mean, again, Jenny, trauma surgeon's partner, might tell you, when my wife gets home, she is asleep so fast and it's taking me much longer to fall asleep. I'm much more worried about Jenny.
Totally.
So,
I actually read something about that if you fall asleep something like within 15 minutes or anything shorter than 15 minutes of laying down, then you're probably sleep deprived.
Right. So, and those are great ways, as we were talking about the 8 hours. Well, great, Chris. You say 8 hours is average. How much do I need? Those are the little clues you look for. If you sit down and watch a little Jeopardy and you never make it to double Jeopardy because you always fall asleep, that might be a little indication that the 7 hours that you seek every night, you might need a little bit more than that. But going back to what you were saying, one of the biggest driving forces of insomnia is this fear that if we don't get in bed and don't get to sleep quickly, we are somehow shortchanging ourselves of sleep. And there really is no research that would support that whatsoever. The people who are shortchanging themselves, when you read the article about sleep deprivation causing, massive cost to our health industry and all kinds of medical issues when people sleep deprive themselves, we're really talking about people like Jenny, trauma surgeon, like the person driving the Uber at night after their full day of 10 hours of work. These are individuals that are sleep depriving themselves. And when you ask them, hey, when you get home and get into bed, what's going on there? I had a guy who said, when I finish driving my Uber, I pull into the driveway. I don't even go into the house. I put the seat back, go right to sleep.
Oh, oof.
I'm so sleepy at the end of my shift that it's just the idea of getting out of the car, getting in there. I just sleep in the car. And my wife will come out, knock on the window in the morning, wake me up, have coffee, I shower, and I go to my other job.
Oh.
So when you talk about, hey, what do you do? What pills are you taking to help yourself fall asleep? They're looking at you like, what are you talking about? Like,
right.
It's about staying awake. It's surviving. You drink coffee and sleep. I drive the Uber sitting on my car keys because it's uncomfortable and keeps me awake. So the fear that individuals are somehow in control of their sleep, or if they don't fall asleep within a short period of time, they're not going to get the sleep they need, is really kind of a myth. And that's why it's really helpful to define insomnia not as a person who can't sleep, which is if you ask 100 people what insomnia is, that's probably what they'd tell you. Oh, insomnia, it's a guy who can't sleep. No, it's actually a person who's not sleeping when they've decided they want to. So they went to bed at 11. It's now 11:30 and they're still awake. So that's part A. Part B is you're not happy about it. You're upset about it. You're anxious about it. You're thinking about it. You're trying to problem solve it. Versus, oh, I'm awake. It's okay. Sort of like going to lunch with friends and they order their food and you're not that hungry. So you order a chicken sandwich, but you just really don't want to eat it. You're not you don't have the appetite for the sandwich. So you wrap it up and your friends say, oh, you're not going to eat that? You're like, yeah, I'm just not that hungry. Would you call your doctor? Would you take a pill for that situation? Or would you have the faith in your body's metabolic system that, oh, well, sometimes people aren't hungry for a meal and they skip it and nothing happens.
That's probably
You
a good
go
way
right on
to
living
keep
your
your weight
life.
down, too.
Right, exactly.
All of those
There's
things.
something to be said for not eating when you're hungry.
Totally.
But, so we have a faith in that. And then nobody, if you interviewed that person and said, you're not going to eat that sandwich, aren't you worried about starving to death? Aren't you worried about malnutrition? They would look at you like, of course not.
Does sound a
I
little
always
crazy.
eat my lunch. This is kind of a one-off thing. But with sleep, we're so educated about sleep now, which is awesome. People love to talk about sleep. I just flew back from Salt Lake City last night. If I'm sitting next to somebody and they say, what do you do? I say, I'm a neurologist. So like, oh, I've got a grandmother who has migraines or something. Oh, that's great. If you say you're a sleep doctor, you're not going to get any sleep on the plane flight because people have all kinds of stories to tell and questions to answer. And that's fine. I like that. I like being of service, even if it's on a Delta flight from Salt Lake City. So, but understanding these things is really important. And I think we don't do a great job of educating people. We just do a good job of kind of scaring people. And that's not always great. And it's not anybody's fault. You've got 300 words to write, what are the greatest tips for falling asleep fast? I just read the most ridiculous article on some outlet that said, if you want to fall asleep in 10 seconds, 30 seconds, or 1 minute, here are the methods to use.
Lord.
I'm like, what are you talking? One was like putting your feet up and doing a breathing technique. And then the other one was this sort of army technique. And then I love the idea that it was like a menu at a restaurant. I'll take the 30 seconds to fall asleep item, please. And I just couldn't believe that somebody would stand behind that article. But that's the kind of thing that we put out there.
Oh, okay.
You've got to fall asleep fast or else. And I don't think falling asleep fast makes us any healthier than eating our dinner fast.
Makes sense.
If you're having trouble eating your dinner in less than 5 minutes, try these chips and we can get your dinner consumption down to 3.5 minutes guaranteed. Like, well, that doesn't mean anything.
Oh my God.
Anyway.
Okay. Well, this is Dr. Chris Winter, and you're listening to The Dream Journal. My name is Catherine Bell, and I would like to open up the phones. So if you have a question for Dr. Winter or myself about sleep or a story to share, or a dream to share for that matter, you can give us a call. The number is 831-900-5773. This beautiful music reminds me a little of the music I put out in the background when I'm trying to fall asleep. I always love to have a little cricket sounds and birds and water. So we are listening to, you are listening to The Dream Journal. My name is Catherine Bell. My guest today is Dr. Chris Winter, and you can find him online at wchriswinter.com. He is a sleep specialist and neurologist and the host of the podcast Sleep Unplugged with Dr. Chris Winter. And we have a caller Susan. Here we go. Hi, Susan. Are you there?
Hi, Catherine. How are you? Yes, I am.
Great.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you sound wonderful. Where are you calling from, Susan?
Novato.
Oh,
You've been here.
Oh, okay. Oh, Susan. Susan. Got it. Welcome. Thanks for calling in. Thanks for being a listener.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. And I really am finding this show absolutely wonderful. Chris, I got to thank you so much for normalizing irregular sleep patterns. I get a lot of grief because I wake up very early in the morning. If I wake up earlier than 3:30 a.m., I try to go back to sleep. But if I can't, I'm just like down with that. It's like, okay, I'll get up and start my day. I get a lot of grief for it, even though I'm very quiet. So it's really nice.
You give me the
It's
names of the
really
people
nice.
giving you grief, and we'll take care of it. So,
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought this up. I mean, there's a couple things at play here. Number one, there's a concept of chronotype, and this has been around forever. It's become a bit more popularized lately, and people give different things different names. Are you a bear? Are you a wolf? Are you a honey badger? I don't know what they mean, but essentially what we're talking about is, are you somebody that if we put you in a little apartment that had no windows and gave you all the food and everything you wanted, but there was nothing about your living space that gave you any sense of time, what would your natural rhythm sort of fall into? And there are some individuals who their circadian rhythm is a bit more advanced, we call it, meaning that you like to go to bed maybe a little bit earlier, get up a little earlier. There's other people who are a bit more delayed. Teenagers tend to be more like that. They want to go to bed at 3 o'clock in the morning, wake up at 4 in the afternoon. And that can change over time. Usually we become a little bit more circadian advanced. We want to go to bed earlier, get up earlier as we get older. And at the same time, as we are maturing, we're also tending to require less sleep. So somebody who needed 7.5 hours when they were 30, 6.5 hours might be perfectly fine when they're in their 60s or 70s, whatever. So it's really all about what works for the individual. If the individual says, look, I wake up at 3:30, sometimes I'll try to relax and meditate, pray, go back to sleep. Sometimes I don't, I get up and go. And I'm not falling asleep in church. I don't nod off when I watch Jeopardy. I've got lots of energy. I feel good. My mood is great. Then, yeah, I mean, I think that your family might want to back off a little bit. There's nothing wrong with that. And we judge sleep a lot in this country in a lot of different ways. It's a very judgmental process. If you get up early with the chickens and the roosters, you're a very pious individual. If you're somebody who sleeps late, you're a sloth.
The
That's
early
not
bird gets
good.
the worm and all that. Yes.
Right. So usually, the family is fussing about people who stay in bed too long. But so as long as you're okay with it, it's probably fine, and not feeling an overwhelming sense of I've got to take a 3-hour nap in the middle of the afternoon and this and that. And that sort of gets into sort of polyphasic sleep. If you're a tired individual and you want to sleep 5 hours at night and take a 2-hour nap during the day, if you're okay with it, as long as it's consistent and seems to be helping you reach your health goals, I'm okay with it as well too. And there's a lot of evidence that says that maybe we were built to sleep in 2 periods. So I think that rather than giving people grief, we should give people support. And if there's ever a sense of, well, maybe there is something wrong with my sleep because the way I'm sleeping leaves me feeling in a way that I don't like, there's always ways to investigate your sleep that are getting more and more simple, that might be able to provide you either the answer or at least a piece of paper you can wave in your family's face and say, see, look, perfect sleep. My doctor said I have the sleep of a 22-year-old, so leave me alone. So anyway.
I love that. I'm an early riser too. Actually, I tend to wake up early. In fact, we were talking about insomnia before, and falling asleep is not my issue, but I do tend to wake up in the middle of the night, and then even if I've been up for hours, once this first little bit of daylight shows up, like 5 o'clock in the morning, 5:15, I'm like, that's it. I'm done. That's it.
Yeah.
I don't usually nap either. There's something about just being an early riser, and it sounds like you are too, Susan.
Yeah. For me, it's having the world to myself, I think. It's the quiet time where nobody is demanding, not having to clean up after anybody. It's all my time. But I do have issues later on, definitely. I do fall asleep during Jeopardy.
Okay.
Or I only watch Jeopardy when I'm visiting with my mom. And I
Me
just
too.
saw her over Christmas. And I did fall asleep. Sorry. But no, that's just to say I do have issues later in the day, or even like mid-morning is when it starts. But
So
it's been nice working from home.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And I think a lot of people sort of find themselves that working from home is sort of a blessing and a curse for some people, in the sense that, Susan, if she's tired at 2 in the afternoon, there's nothing stopping her perhaps from taking a nap. I mean, some people have very flexible schedules. Other people don't. And you just sometimes have to watch out for the truly flexible. The retired person, nobody's in the house, no job, they can get really sort of tangled up in some bad sleep because if they have a bad night, they might accidentally take a 2-hour nap during the day, and that sort of interferes with the drive they need to fall asleep at night. So I always sort of preach structure, but that structure can be whatever works well for you, but there should be some degree of structure there. So in other words, if the falling asleep in jeopardy is just a minute or two, that's okay. But if you're actually, sitting down to watch the news in the evening and often sleeping for an hour on the couch, just understand that that hour is not without a consequence to what's going on at night. So, as you sit down and start to feel yourself getting sleepy, getting up and getting a drawer out of a desk and organizing receipts and throwing away dead batteries and doing something active to make sure you make it to your bedtime can often help with individuals who awaken during the night or awaken earlier than what they would like. Or you say, you know what, I don't mind taking a little nap during the day and only sleeping until 3:30. That's, giving me that time to have some coffee in the morning when the house is quiet and get some things done without phone calls and emails coming at me. That personal time, I don't think we prioritize enough. It seems selfish sometimes for a family member to say, I need an hour or two to myself to watch a trashy TV show and not be bothered by this or that. And a lot of times people find those at either ends of the spectrum, late at night when everybody's in bed or early in the morning when everybody's still sleeping. And I think sometimes there's a guilt that goes along with that where there really shouldn't be.
Well, that's the time. Early morning is the time when I get my writing done. I'm working on a book about dreaming, and I tend to wake up around 5 anyway. Instead of just laying there waiting for my partner to wake up, a year and a half or so, I've been writing from 5:30 to 7:30 every morning, and I'm getting tremendous amount of work done. And it's just perfect time of the day. I don't even have any food first. I just make a cup of herbal tea, and I go and I sit down with my laptop, and I get so much done. But then I'm, going to sleep at 9. But
Yeah. So it's interesting. I remember being in college, and coming home from some event really, really early in the morning, having been up all night. And I remember seeing these two guys as I was coming back to the place where I live. They were getting up to go exercise. And I remember thinking, what's wrong with them? I truly thought that they were the ones with the weird problem and not me, dragging myself home at 6 o'clock, having not slept. As you get older, you realize just how nice it is to start the day kind of early if you can. Or my wife's been on sort of a yoga kick lately, and I'm unbelievably inflexible. And so I've been trying to get up and do that with her. And it's just a wonderful time of day and getting some things done first thing in the morning. Sometimes when your day goes really poorly, at the end of the day, you're like, well, at least I got up and did some yoga.
Right.
That was nice. At least I succeeded there, and everything else was terrible today, but that was great. So I think as you get older, you just tend to kind of value that. But again, I'm not here to disparage the night owl. If you want to get up at noon and go to bed really late, as long as you're happy with the way your life's going and feeling like you're fulfilled, then there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Oh, that's great. And that is sort of the key is everything going well as far as the sleep goes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Susan, thank you so much for calling. It's good to hear from you.
You're
thanks,
welcome.
Susan.
This is a great show. I'm loving it. Thanks so much.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
I feel like Susan might be a relative of mine. I think Susan might actually be my mom. So just as a disclaimer there. Thanks, Mom. Appreciate you for calling in. Good acting, Mom.
Oh, we get all support from our family. I love that. Yes. So, while we have, about 10 more minutes, Chris, I was wondering if you would want to talk a little bit about dreaming. This is the Dream Journal, after all. And what is your experience? You've mentioned Robert Van de Castle, and Matthew Walker, of course, has some wonderful chapters about dreaming. Do you discuss dreaming in your books, or what has been your experience with dreaming?
Yeah, so to some extent, yes. I mean, my books are a lot more, I would say, clinical in the sense that, sure, we talk about REM sleep and dreaming a lot, but more as a marker for some other things we might see in a clinic. I've got a lot of interest in dreaming. You mentioned Dr. Van de Castle. I should just mention he was a really interesting professor of psychiatry and behavioral medicine at the University of Virginia, and was really interested in dreaming and did really cool experiments like, I'm going to tell these husbands a word or an image like a little matchbox car. And I want you to go to bed and think about the matchbox car. And then asking partners and wives the next day, did you have a dream? And if you dreamt, what did you dream about? And trying to figure out, is there any way that I could like send a dream message to my partner in my sleep? Is this conscious communication the only way we're communicating with people? And I just really found his research to be really cool. And he's a very, very interesting and thoughtful guy. And we miss him. He died a few years ago, I believe back in, well, it's probably been about 10 years now, I guess, maybe. But anyway, so we think a lot about dreaming. I find dreaming fascinating. I experimented with lucid dreaming for a period of time, which I thought was really interesting, and a way that a lot of people can deal with certain aspects of their sleep very effectively. If you're somebody who is plagued by recurrent nightmares, which we see something we call nightmare disorder, where somebody's basically saying, look, I have such awful nightmares that are recurrent that it makes me dread wanting to go to sleep and things of that nature. And I wake up, and even though we all get that sense of after a bad dream, you wake up and, oh, thank God I'm not having to take this test. Like I always had the dream that I meet my buddy and they're like, oh, the finals right now. Well, wait a minute, I'm not in this class. Yes, you are. You're enrolled and you've got to take the test right now. And you go in there and and you wake up, you're like, oh, yes, that was just a dream. And then it's almost a sense of relief. And some people don't even feel that. It's like they can't shake the images that they saw all day long. So there's this real blurring between that and reality. When you look at narcolepsy patients, they have these hypnagogic and hypnopompic hallucinations that are profoundly affect them in terms of they have these visions of things as they're about to go to sleep or about to wake up, that they have difficulties distinguishing from reality.
Wow.
So, and then just dreaming itself can be an interesting marker for sleep health, meaning that if you said, look, do you dream a lot? We ask every patient about their dreams. And not only do you dream or not, but what's the content of it? So if somebody says, look, I was never a dreamer, which doesn't mean you don't dream. It probably means you're dreaming, you just don't remember them. We have to kind of wake up to remember a dream. So if somebody says, I didn't really dream last night, you probably, like you were saying, had several cycles of REM sleep, but you just went in and out of them pretty seamlessly, so you don't really remember what happened. But if somebody says, over the last 2 years, I am dreaming a lot, just out of nowhere, and it's always me being chased or me drowning or sort of being suffocated or something, like that could be very meaningful in terms of what might be going on with your sleep. Maybe you're developing some sleep apnea. So every clinician should pay attention to dreams for sure. If you want to get into the meaning of them or the interpretation of them, that's fun too. But just their mere presence or the changing character of the dream can be extremely important in terms of understanding what's going on with somebody's sleep health.
Right. You're saying that kind of the quality of the dream really can reflect something about, well, the overall health of the person, but also the quality of their sleep.
Yeah, and their psychological state, and we tend to bring in some sensory input into our dreaming. So it was always the sleepover party. Let's dip their hand in water, and they'll So I think a lot of people have had the experience of your alarm goes off. Have you ever had a dream where you incorporate the sound of the alarm into your dream?
Oh, absolutely.
And so you wake up and you realize, oh my gosh, I was dreaming that my dog was playing a trumpet. Yeah. And then you wake up and realize, oh no, that wasn't the trumpet. That was the alarm that I would beep, beep, beep.
Right.
Or I always dreamt that the car was backing up or something like that. But that feeling of not being able to breathe or snoring or sleep apnea, you can sometimes bring that feeling into your dreams. So if you're somebody who says, look, I've never been a dreamer, but now I have these awful dreams of drowning, that might be your brain sort of taking that feeling of suffocation that you have with sleep apnea and weaving it into the texture of the dream, which is really fascinating to me. So we almost dream out our realities in some ways at night. It's not completely fabricated. There's often meaning to some of these things that we're kind of pulling into our dreams. And it's really fun to kind of explore those things with patients.
Oh, absolutely. Like I often find the dream will make me aware of a feeling that's been going on for a while, but I maybe have been pushing it away and pretending it's not there. And then the dream will kind of
Absolutely.
like bring it in. Like, I don't know if you heard my dream at the beginning, but this sense of kind of anxiety sometimes that creeps into me, or that the dream just it embodies it. It pictures it. It
Of
makes
course.
an image for that feeling, which is very helpful. My ex-husband used to say, "Oh no, you had a dream, and now you're going to be cranky all day." I'm like, "Well, hey, now I'm really cranky."
Well, some people who wake up during REM sleep, we generally wake up about 20 minutes after terminating our final REM sleep. But if you wake up early, or you have to get up and catch a flight, and you wake up during REM sleep, it can leave people feeling sort of irritable, yucky, kind of a little out of it, not quite themselves. And so there can be meaning in that as well, too, in terms of somebody's schedule or how they're kind of coming at that as well. But no, I mean, I think that thinking about our bodies dream about things that we're working on. I mean, has anybody ever had a dream where you just went to the store and bought some milk and bread? That was the dream? No, it's always something complex. And I like the idea that dreaming is to some degree a sandbox where our brain is kind of working out certain scenarios and issues as we try to sort of wrestle with it. Like you have a bad interaction with a friend.
Mm-hmm.
Your brain is working on that. I mean, everybody's had the experience of, who was that girl I knew in college? Remember the one that always wore that funny hat? Oh, God, yeah, what was her name? Can't remember. And you wake up the next day, oh, it's Laura. Laura, oh, right, Laura, yes. Like your brain was working on that all night long, even though you weren't aware of that. So this idea that, your brain is, sleep is a sort of an off state of your nervous system. No, it's very much on. It's just an on without consciousness a lot of times. And so dreams give us a little window into what's going on with that process.
I love that. So, Chris Winter, your webpage, wchriswinter.com, and maybe you'd like to tell our listeners a bit about your podcast.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So my podcast is called Sleep Unplugged. We do it once a week, and it's a topic about sleep. Like I said, every first Monday is a topic specific to insomnia, just because that's such a big topic that it really requires a lot more process. So I think we're about 30 episodes in. The response has been just overwhelming. I can't believe how many people listen to it. At one point, we were the number one medical podcast in Bulgaria. So just big shout out to the Bulgarian sleep community for their support. And we like to have fun. We try to keep it loose, but also we want to leave somebody at the end of that, 25 minutes feeling very educated about the topic that we chose. If you want to interact with the show, you can do it through my Twitter or Instagram. It's Dr. Chris Winter, like Dr. Chris Winter. But really having a lot of fun with it, and really love it when people write in and ask questions or give color. Hey, you did this thing about we just did an episode about cataphrenia, people who moan in their sleep, which I find really interesting and actually do it myself. And got all kinds of cool, DMs on Twitter and Instagram from people who do it or live, with people who do it. And so I really feel like we're kind of reaching a lot of people and really educating them about their sleep, and hopefully giving them some information about where to turn if you're somebody who has sleep paralysis or cataphrenia or snoring or whatever your sleep issue will be. So it's called Sleep Unplugged. You can find it on any platform. We do have a YouTube page if you really want to see me talking to the microphone. We record it that way. I'm not sure it's the most thrilling thing. And just been a lot of fun. Really, really having a fun time with it.
Excellent. Is there any other kind of contact information you want to give, or any upcoming events that you want to talk about?
That's a great question. I don't think so. You mentioned both my books, The Sleep Solution, Why Your Sleep's Broken, How to Fix It, The Rested Child. No, we work with a bunch of professional sports teams. So spring training is getting ready to get started. So maybe I work with your favorite baseball team. Maybe I don't. And if I do and you're not winning, I'm sorry. We like to kind of create sort of a sleep community with Sleep Unplugged, much in the way it sounds like that you're doing here. So Yeah, no, we're just seeing patients and doing podcasts and writing a book here and there and just really trying to get people sleeping a little bit better.
Excellent. Well, it's been a real pleasure, Chris. It's so good to have you on the show, and sweet dreams.
Hey, sweet dreams to you as well. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thanks, Chris. Bye.
Bye now.
All right. So next week, we will be speaking to Dr. Suzanne Manis from the University of Texas in Rio Grande. She'll be talking about using the DreamStar method in counseling sessions. If you want to join the conversation live, you can tune in Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. Pacific at the ksqd.org live stream. The podcast replay will be released on the Monday following the show. I am Catherine Bell, and this has been the Dream Journal. Thanks for listening. You can find out more about my own dream coaching practice at experientialdreamwork.com. You can email me at catherine@ksqd.org. That's KATHERINE@ksqd.org. The Dream Journal is produced at the studios of KSQD in Santa Cruz, California. Archives and 24/7 live stream at ksqd.org. Remember to subscribe, rate, and review. In fact, I feel like we're due a few more reviews. So if you happen to be one of your platforms, especially iTunes, I would love to get a little love from you. Tomorrow morning, when you wake up, take a minute to write down your dream and bring it to the next Dream Journal.
All the husbands and wives, all the boys and the girls, and everyone in the world knows that so much is wrong, but much more is right. We see in the darkness by shine.